Sane. I know I can be.
We are live. I'm going to wait for you to sit down before the introductions. We are live. We are live. We are live.
There we go.
Hopefully we got some audio coming through.
Hello.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Mental Health Awareness.
Awareness.
My name is William DeBacari, and I am joined by...
Brian Carson. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you again.
How you doing today, Brian?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
Yep. Things are going really well. Pumping. Just really cranking on my personal business. Health is all good. Oh, there we go.
We're live.
Got our Twitch notification. If you don't got it, get it.
Twitch.tv/AllOfUsStudios. Go check us out, guys.
Twitch.tv/AllOfUsStudios.
We're also on YouTube as well, too. We'll be uploading these every single week. If you search for Shy Guy on YouTube, but if you also look under All of Us Studios, they'll be archived in All of Us Studios library as well, too. But go give Shy Guy a like and a subscribe. That's me. I'm Shy Guy. Come check it out. So...
He's not that shy anymore.
No.
He used to kind of be kind of shy.
A little bit.
But he's good for helping shy guys. That's for sure.
That's very true.
That is very true.
Thank
if
you.
you're a shy guy out there and you need somebody to help you, DM this man through All of Us Studios or through Shy Guy because he'll give you some of the best advice you'll ever get from anybody ever, anywhere.
Thank you. Wow, that's a ringing endorsement if I do say so myself. I appreciate that, Brian. Thank you. But we are here for psychology. We are here because I am currently getting my master's in clinical mental health counseling. If you guys have been following us through this journey, we go week by week. I am currently in week number 4 right now. So we're going to go ahead and talk about what happened with me, the discussion posts, and all that sort of stuff. And we're also going to open it up into a forum, whether it be in the chat if you guys want to chime in on twitch.tv/AllOfUsStudios with your thoughts, your concerns, your ideas. And as always, we're going to bounce ideas back and forth between each other and talk about it in a live forum.
We'll be seeing your chat right here, too.
Yep, exactly. And we'll be taking a look at you. So this week, we are going to focus on the development of infancy. And so basically what this is this is from the time you're born to about the age of 3 years old, to get into the terrible 2s and the horrible 3s or whatever they call them, the case may be. But we're going to look at that from a pretty microscopic view, and we're going to kind of really dissect, talk about different theories. The main idea around this talk is going to be attachment, different attachment patterns in toddlerhood, and the emotional and basically like the emotional and the physical attachment that an infant can have, whether it be with the caregiver, whether it be with the parents, whether it be with the grandparents, basically that person who is that specific individual who is taking care of them.
Guardian.
Imagine that. Exactly.
The guardian.
The guardian of that individual. So I'm going to go through at the beginning, top of the show, just like we always do. I'm going to talk about my discussions through the week. We're going to read them out loud. We're going to have a little chatty chat about it. We're going to see how we feel.
Down for a chit.
And then we're also going to do something a little bit different this time. I'm going to read a post that I sent to somebody else because this week's topic really resonated with me. Spoiler alert, it's about my history.
Diving in.
And it actually talks about kind of the way my parents raised me, especially at a much younger age as well, too, as far as exposure, not me being exposed, but what I'm talking about is I'm talking about exposure to different entertainment mediums, exposure to different, ideas as far as sex is concerned and violence and the whole 9 yards. So I'm looking forward to really touching into that. That's going to be the kind of end cap meat and potatoes of what we're going to do today. So,
sweet.
Yeah, it's going to be really
forward
cool.
to it, man.
It's going to be really, really cool.
It's going to be great.
So basically, like I said, we're going to talk about attachment and emotional development in infancy, autonomy into toddlerhood. So attachment definition, according to Bowley, Ainsworth, Blair, Waters, and Wall, 1978, as cited in Wong et al. 2015, all these APA-style abbreviations, and citations.
Do it.
Attachment is an affectional bond between two individuals that is persistent and emotionally significant. Ding. The attachment procedures a desire to maintain closeness as well as to seek security and comfort in results of distress when two individuals are involuntarily separated. The definition of attachment is a fondness or affection for someone or something in particular. I think that
Okay.
that's pretty self-explanatory.
It's pretty straightforward.
Have you had any I mean, maybe in your personal life, but from your parents bringing you up and all that sort of stuff, like, what are some of those things that you've noticed, whether it be, a relationship with your parents or a relationship with a significant other? Like, what are some attachment patterns and like intricacies that you've seen, maybe that were repeated, or maybe that you like that worked for you or didn't work for you? Like,
Definitely.
What do you think? Like, what's kind of like the word attachment mean to you?
Yeah, I feel like there's like some pretty strong parenting styles here where some people go with I mean, I know it from training my dog, right? But they have to train kids, which, man, that must be way harder. Training a dog is one thing, but training a kid, I couldn't even imagine. But there's kind of the two different camps, which is like we're going to nurture through compassion, right? And we're going to, our kid's going to mess up. We're going to tell them it's okay. We're going to hug them. We're going to love them. Or our kid's going to mess up and we're going to strike them, or, maybe not even physically, but maybe verbally strike them. We're going to tell them, this is wrong. This is bad. We're going to discipline them, put them in a corner, shun them, dunce cap that child, whatever it may be.
Right.
But giving them the negative reinforcement versus the immediate positive reinforcement, I feel like there's a big split there. And I think that's got to be a difficult thing for a parent. I'm not a parent, so I don't know that, but I know it from the child's perspective. And obviously, I'm 32 now. I've seen it a lot.
Sure.
But I think that there's that's something that I know my parents learned through raising me. I definitely know that my parents started with a little bit more of a controlling parenting style.
Okay.
And that became looser and freer as time went on. That might just be a symptom of just us growing up and them feeling like, these kids got to, got to take care of themselves a little bit more, or maybe it was them just getting fatigued,
Sure.
Or
maybe a combination of both.
Right, you got to get run down a little bit, or, but I think that in the long run, something that really never worked for me was dismissal or I was a kid that always asked why. I'm a very inquisitive person, want to know, like, I'll dig down to the source. And that's one reason why I think I really enjoy and love science.
Sure, of course.
Is because you can always ask that next question, why, dig a little deeper, find the answer, ask that next question, why. And it's this cycle where you keep going deeper and deeper, and pretty soon you find the root cause or the proof of whatever it is. And that was something that I think growing up pre-internet was probably really difficult for parents, because their kids would ask the question why, and it's like, I don't have, like, what am I going to do? Pull out an Encyclopedia Britannica and search through this at the moment and try to find the answer? Like, I don't know. And so a lot of the times the answer was because I said so, or, and they use things like that, which that type of thing never worked with me. I would have rather them say, I don't know,
Rather admit the fact that they're doing this maybe in the moment, whether it be right or wrong, but they're doing it, they're making a decision, and just to be completely upfront and honest with you and be like, I don't know, but this feels right at the time, so we're going to go with it.
Exactly. Yeah. This is the best that we have, know? And then it's just a matter of, do you respect them or not?
Right.
And I do respect my parents a lot. I love my parents. I mean, they're phenomenal people. So there's that didn't really work for me.
Okay.
But what really did work for me was their attention. And I think that's, if there's one takeaway from my entire childhood that I know that I'll carry on to my family in the future, it will be that sense of attention. And I never once through my childhood felt like I was left or stranded, or that my parents didn't care.
Right.
They were always there. Any event that I had, any question that I had, they sat down, they talked with me, they showed up, they took me where, I needed to go. They did the best they could all the time. And I think that masks, any mistakes that really they could have made as parents.
Sure.
They showed it through attention, and they tried. And that's worth more than gold to me.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
the energy and the outcome is in the effort, not necessarily in the pre-calculated, I'm going to do this because like you say, like, I think I'm going to do this for X, Y, and Z reasons, but I'm not backing it up. I'd rather just do it, make the decision, and then basically understand why I'm being done this to me, basically, in a sense of like, okay, I can dig deeper. I can go, why did this happen? Okay, it happened because I was acting out. Okay, well, I was acting out because I was feeling like I was not being loved or attended to, or whatever the case may be. So that's really good. And it's cool because we have very opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to not necessarily like where we grew up together, because Brian and I go way back to the 4th grade. I mean, but I'm talking about the parent dichotomy, where Brian had younger parents and I had much older parents. And so it wasn't like there was no middle ground for the two of us.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see the differences where you get the kind of, because like I said so, and I got like a laundry list of lifelong experiences as to why I should be having these feelings about X, Y, and Z, and watching HBO at 9 years old. Like, you know, it's very interesting where like, and especially because my dad was a chemical dependency therapist. And he just, both my mom and my dad had like 2 full lifelong experiences before they had me.
Yeah, and so, other children. Your dad had other children.
Exactly. I have 2 stepsisters and a stepbrother.
Exactly. So he had just a boatload of experience to back up what was happening to you.
Right.
Where he could say, I've seen this go this way and this way. You want to go this way.
Right.
Where my parents are like, shit, this is our first time through it.
Right.
Like, we're kind of guessing here too, you know?
And there's absolute merit in that too, which I think is really interesting, because you also kind of learn together and you guys feel it out together. And now you being 32 years old, you guys can have those conversations when you were growing up. You could talk about and be like, that was interesting. Yeah, how did that work out? Oh, we seem to work. We're doing just fine now.
We're doing okay.
Yeah, exactly.
We're doing all right. Just so you guys know, we're all doing all right.
We're all doing okay.
We're all doing all right.
All right. So moving on from attachment definition. So we're going to talk about attachment patterns and the impact on the development of attachment. So the most significant impact a caregiver can have on an infant's upbringing is consistency. That's something that I believe, and that's why I put it in
100% believe that. Consistency in all things is just, So that's it. I mean, consistency and attention, right? They're hand in hand, just what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Because you're never going to feel like you're getting attention if it's not consistently given.
That's right.
Right?
And especially in a much younger age as well, too, where like you don't know right from wrong. You don't know which hand you are stronger with. You're not even sure what's going on. And so the more consistent behavior, the more better and more prone you are to having good developmental patterns and tendencies. So according to counseling individuals through the lifespan, there are 4 types of attachment: securely attached, anxious resistant, avoidant attached, and disorganized disoriented. Securely attached means the infant feels safe and secure with his or her caregiver. Anxious resistant infants are hesitant to explore and fearful of new circumstances due to their caregiver's inconsistent response nature. Avoidant attached infants feel their caregiver is unavailable, therefore suppressing their negative emotions of distress. And disorganized, disoriented attachment in infants seem to appear dazed and confused and disoriented with their caregiver, possibly a result of emotional or physical abuse or neglect. So that's definitely the scariest or the lowest rung of having that specific development attachment cycle kind of fall by the wayside. So yeah, these 4 are really interesting. I'll give them to you guys again. Securely attached, anxious resistant, avoidant attached, and disorganized or disoriented.
So break them down a little bit. What do you think?
For me,
can you give kind of like an example or extrapolate into each one?
Yeah, so I'm gonna dive into what I personally believe I think each 4 really kind of means. And so we'll start off with securely attached. I think securely attached is literally the definition of consistency when it comes to upbringing, whether you're the caregiver or the parents. It really has to be consistent all the way through. Even if you make a mistake as a caregiver, that's one thing. Own the mistake. It's fine. Just don't do it again. Don't make it habitual. Don't make it about the end result where, okay, I'm disciplining this child because they did something bad. Do they know what they did bad? Do they even have any conscious idea as far as the right from wrong in a situation? If they don't, the best way to lead them to a more adult, basically, mindset is to keep being consistent with the behavior that's going to best benefit them in terms of positive outcomes, which is really kind of interesting because for me, I know my upbringing, for me, the consistency, and this is going to sound really bad, but the consistency was fear of screwing up. Like, really.
I think a lot of people deal with that probably.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
I don't think it's uncommon, but I think that it's something that people have maybe a harder time admitting, where it's like, yeah, I mean, I didn't want to fuck up by my dad. I didn't want to fuck up by my mom, because they created such a platform of success in the sense of, this is where you need to be striving for, and we're giving you the tools and the information and the consistency to be able to do something like that. I think that having that level to be able to achieve is huge, and it only comes through being consistent. So I think securely attached really has a lot to do with, like I said, being cognizant of right and wrong. And if you don't understand right and wrong because you're still in an infant stage and you're still developing cognitive thought and yada yada and whatever the case may be, as long as their patterns are consistent and you can repeat them and they produce a positive outcome, you're on the right track. So for securely attached, that's what that means to me.
So let me run with this a little bit.
Yeah.
So what we know through biology and science that that you change through stress, though. The body grows and it changes through stress. And so if you're always given the same stimulus, then there's no need to change.
Correct.
Right? So when is it the point to provide a new stimulus and be inconsistent to cause growth in a child when because for example, a 3-year-old is going to require a different type of feeling than a 16-year-old, a 3-year-old, something bad happens. And if you give the 3-year-old the exact same stimulus that you'd give a 16-year-old, they're going to get completely different results, right? You don't go up and hold and coddle the 16-year-old and pet it, and they're needing starting to learn their own independence and things like that, and same thing with a 3-year-old. You don't walk up to a 3-year-old that's crying and you just start lecturing them because they don't understand what you're talking about, right?
No freaking idea. Yeah.
So how do you make those, right? Because that's where the consistency is going to be different, right? Is the consistency then not necessarily in the action, but in a tone? Is it in a
totally? You took the thought. Yeah, go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, exactly. Like what is consistent and stays the same throughout the growth pattern and developmental patterns of a child, and what changes and allows for growth? Because it can't always be the same.
I think reinforcement always has to be positive and consistent, where I think that the learning or the stumbling or going through something on your own and making the mistake, but then, like you said, having the different various levels of, let's just use punishment loosely, and being able to scold somebody and get loud to intimidate or to draw a point or to do something to where you maybe put fear inside of that person. So then your behavior towards that specific instance is going to be commanding presence and also making sure that you command the authority that goes along with that presence as well too. However, just like Brian was saying, to a 3-year-old, you're going to scare the shit out of that 3-year-old by yelling at him, and that's not good for their cognitive development.
You just took them right from secure to
disorganized, disoriented. Yeah, exactly.
Right? They're like, I want to get out of here.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, if I make a mistake, I'm going to be damaged. I'm going to be hurt.
Right.
Right.
I'm creating the synapses that allow me to never do that again.
Yeah.
So so for me, that's where it is. I think it's circumstantial. I think it depends on what the criteria is. I also think that it does need to change. Going back to that consistently repeating the same pattern over and over and over again to get a different result, that's like the definition of insanity, where if you expect something to change and if you keep doing the same thing, you're not going to get that. So I think that it is circumstantial. I think that you also have to tailor your disciplinary action or tailor your coaching talk with your toddler or with your 16-year-old to the specific circumstance. For example, let's say the 16-year-old stays out too late or whatever the case. I don't know what kids do these days. I have no idea.
Breaking through windows.
Yeah, sure. Like they break an abandoned house window or something.
That's
and they sneak in with
they
their
totally
friends.
would do.
Yeah, like exactly. So where do you come down on the punishment with that? Do you intimidate them to make sure that they never do it again? Well, the 16-year-old might be intimidated, but they also may be like, well, that was fun. Nobody was hurt. I didn't really cause any damage because this place is a junk anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I being ridiculed for something that was fun?
Okay.
Now, obviously, you're destroying property. Obviously, you're doing all this sort of stuff. But at the same time, that individual, that 16-year-old, has a much better worldly grasp than any toddler or infant because they can't even put together a cognitive thought.
And they might flee the scenario, right? And just say, if you're going to treat me that way for something that I feel like, logically shouldn't require such a large punishment.
Right.
If the punishment doesn't fit the crime, right? Then, and at 16, they can differentiate the two. Then you get somebody who then starts to lose trust in you potentially, and maybe wants to flee the situation, or or just disobey you even further, just to spite you potentially.
It becomes a game for them.
Yeah, where a toddler isn't going to know, they're not going to logically be able to differentiate the punishment, the crime, and the punishment, and so they're going to associate them together, and say, oh, something this small got something this big. So now their scope of what they can do is really, really narrow, because if they go beyond that, who knows what's going to happen.
Sure.
And, any little thing then could set this person off in their mind, right?
Exactly.
So they just could potentially grow up living in fear. So,
which is not a good way to grow up.
Yeah, there's one other thing I wanted to go with this.
No, please do.
And that is when, for example, I know somebody, I'm not going to obviously speak their name, but I know somebody who followed exactly what we were talking about, had consistent positive feedback patterns that were consistent with what you would give to a toddler in a 16-year-old.
Oh, interesting. Elaborate. I'm curious to know.
And and the 16-year-old acted as though they were a toddler. They could not leave the mother's side. They wouldn't do things without the mother there. They were extremely attached to the mother.
Okay.
And, when they felt uncomfortable, they would go to the mom and hide in the mom and kiss the mom, and the mom would kiss the child back. And they acted as though it were, and I was a influential part in breaking that, because I was the person that they eventually handed this kid off to and said, we are going to leave the situation, and we're trusting that you're going to handle this. And we know that this child is going to be very uncomfortable with the situation. Child may cry. Child may, this is new. The child has never eaten without the mother present.
Sure. Okay.
Ever.
Okay.
Like, the mother would go to the child's school every day for lunch to eat with them.
Really?
Yeah. And so when those types of things are present, that attachment is so strong. But
that's like overly attached or insecurely attached in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And you could see the developmental challenges with this child, because they really were completely isolated, because they weren't able to have the same social connections and develop the same social connections with kids their age, because they were still connecting like a 3-year-old would. Yeah. And kids of their age don't connect that way anymore. Right. They make fun of each other and throw things. They're loud, and they go do ridiculous stuff.
They break things. They blow shit up. Yeah.
They don't crawl around on the ground and cuddle, and hang out with each other like that, They don't play with blocks and sit on the floor and just think about things because everything's amazing. One great thing though is when you see those hurdles get jumped over, like I got to see with this kid who is now is an incredible success. He's going to Stanford. He's works for, he's a cadet for the police department. He's really blossomed out of his shell.
That's awesome.
And I remember I was there. I was the first person that he ever ate food with when his mother wasn't present. Right. And he broke down and cried and was overeating. And so it's just because you grew up with one thing doesn't mean you can't change, though,
Right.
is what I'm trying to say. You may feel this way, and maybe you classify yourself into one of these 4 categories. It doesn't mean you'll always be there.
That's right.
It means it might be hard for you, and you need to go find a mentor or somebody that can help you, that has the skills that are different than what you've gotten. So maybe you have the skills to put up barriers and put up walls, and you're really good at it because you've had to, because you lived in fear, because you lived in an environment where you had a really, really small leeway for making mistakes without getting that big punishment, right? So you're really good at putting up those boundaries, but you're not really good at taking them down, right? Or maybe you're really good at being very, very open, but you're not good at putting up those boundaries, right? So you need to find your mentor and find somebody that can help you that has skills in that opposite way. And just because you classify yourself and you see yourself in one of these ways doesn't mean that you can't change and see huge successes and be really proud of yourself for making and striving through and getting to those goals, because it can open up a world of possibilities. And I've seen it specifically like with this person who I worked with, where they could have been that person that lived at home their entire life and never succeeded past that and just lived with their mom because they were afraid of the world and they felt comfortable there. But you know what? They decided not to, and they took on challenges outside of themselves. And luckily their parents helped find somebody in me and others to help them break through those. And now look at them. They're going to change the world. This person is a brilliant, brilliant mind. Is going to Stanford and is really we're going to see amazing things from them because they took the time to break through those challenges. So go out there and break through those for yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Really well said. Really, really well said. So like Brian was saying, change is inevitable. And so to be securely attached your entire life is one thing. But to also be securely attached at a younger age and then understand that change is going to happen, that you're going to have to roll with these punches, that you're going to deal with different life circumstances. You may become anxious resistant in some different circumstances. It also may be avoidant attached, where you keep your distance, but at the same time, you still have a bond with the person or with the circumstance or with the relationship or the case may be, but you're avoidant. You keep your distance in that sense. And then there's obviously the very bottom rung, which is disorganized and disoriented, which is it's just for elementary terms, that's a very sad place to be, because you don't have a sense of well-being underneath you. You don't feel like you can stand on your own 2 feet. You feel like that maybe you're not even necessarily owed anything in life, but you don't want anything from life. You're not striving towards anything because you don't feel like you can put together a sentence or have 2 different opposing ideas and find a middle ground and really cognitively think about what does A mean versus B and how can I put a Venn diagram together to actually get the pros and the cons out of this. So like I said, being at the bottom of that rung, the disorganized, disoriented, is really tough. And I know a lot of individuals are stuck in this area because of their upbringing and what they had to go through. So that's basically kind of all I have on this little area specifically here. But what do you think? I mean, it's very obvious to see, I think, and not only with your profession, but even in retail sales, guys. I mean, when you see someone walk in, let's say someone walks in and needs a suit for a winter formal or a prom or the case may be, right? So having those 4 different quadrants, you can see almost immediately what quadrant the son or the daughter falls into when they're getting ready and they're getting dressed up for that specific occasion. They're either securely attached, and that falls into one of 2 things, where they're securely attached, like Brian was saying, where they don't speak a word and they're holding on to their parents because they feel scared for being in a men's retail store because they're out of their element, they're out of their environment. And as much as they really want to go to the dance, they're too shy, they're too not quite self-aware yet to actually say actually, yeah, I had this idea. I want to wear this cool purple shirt with these white shoes. Do you have anything like that? As opposed to breaking through that boundary, the more comforting thing to do is to just latch onto the parent. But on the opposite end of that, you have someone who is very secure and they're attached to their parents, but they're also very open-ended and they're very lively in their talk. They're very eloquent when they speak with you. They look you in the eye when you have an interaction. They shake your hand. But that comes from that sense of being securely attached and being reinforced positively, even for the negative things that you would do, there was the right pathway to be able to take to that, as opposed to saying, no, this is wrong, I'm going to discipline you, you're going to go into timeout for 15 minutes. Well, maybe that worked for some circumstances for them, but for other circumstances, like Brian was saying before, you have to shift that mentality over to a different avenue and be able to attack it from that way. And that way they can benefit from a whole worldly scope, as opposed to the consistent nature of you firing the same note over and over and over again. So I think it's really interesting.
So
like I said,
where do you think that the person is originally, if we were to just say introvert and extrovert,
sure.
do you think that they're more introvert and extrovert and then are leaned one way or another into one of these four categories by their environment? Or do you think that these four categories shape if they're going to be an introvert or extrovert?
That's a really
Which
good
comes
question.
first?
No, that's a really good question. And for me personally, I think it's the latter. I think once they have gone through and understand kind of where they fall in the four quadrants, let's call them, so to speak, I think that the idea of extrovert or introvert is blossomed out of that specifically, as opposed to the front part. Do you think it's different?
No, I just want to know your opinion on that, because when we're talking about specifically that first one, the secured attached one, that seems like it can be polarized into a very introverted person or a very extroverted person, and yet still be very securely attached.
Yeah.
So maybe there's an introvert and an extroverted, how would I put this? An introverted or extroverted display of each one of these four.
Right.
Because for example, if you were, give me one of the other ones.
So we're sitting at,
just pick one randomly.
Let's do disorganized or disoriented.
So disorganized or disoriented. So an extroverted, disorganized, disoriented person, right, might be frantically out there scouring the world and trying to organize, right?
We might know a couple people in our circles that are like that. Yeah, exactly.
They might be hyperactive and because, oh my gosh, everything's disorganized all the time, and I'm OCD about it, and I need to fix it, and I need to, I
have to catch a plane, but I left all my bags at my apartment. Exactly. Yeah.
Jesus Lord. Or vice versa, it could be this thing that just literally clouds their life, and they're like, I am just so disorganized, and like I just need to be like this, and because I don't want to put this on anybody else, and I just need to focus on my three small things and just make sure I do them right, because anything that I do outside of these three things, I'm going to do wrong, because it's going to be overwhelming and it's going to be too much, and I'm not going to be able to take care of it. And oh my God, I don't know what to do. And
then I freeze up.
Yeah. And then they become very introverted. So maybe there's both aspects of all four of these.
And maybe I was going to say, it's actually going to segue us right into our next section, where maybe this has to do with the caretaker and their implementation of either discipline or reward, or the case may be.
Let's go.
Implementation of caretaker strategies and regulating child emotions. Consistent positive behavior and reinforcement are keys to regulating a child's emotions. According to counseling individuals through the lifespan, quote, secure attachment fostered by consistent, predictable relationships is the foundation for healthy childhood development. There are many views on attachment parenting. However, all are loosely rooted in consistency. The goal of the caregiver, is to create autonomy with the child's emotions and actions, creating social and emotional development. According to Wong, 2015, quote, counselors can help parents and caregivers understand that this drive for independence is to be seen as a wonderful event rather than a child misbehaving. One strategy to promote the child's ability to regulate emotions as they develop involves discipline. According to counseling through the individuals through the lifespan, again, quote, discipline is the process of teaching children the values and typical behaviors of society. By guiding children's moral, emotional, and physical development, parents will enable their children to take ownership and responsibility for themselves when they are older. Showcasing discipline for a negative behavior as compared to physical punishment is the key difference. according to Wong et al. 2015, there are 6 principles to effective discipline: parental warmth and involvement, clear communication and expectations, induction and explanation, rules, boundaries, and demands, consistency and consequences, and context and structure. Consistent practices for proper discipline typically result in positive outcomes for both the child and the caretaker. So, to me, what this means is having someone who is your caregiver, the right strategy or the right things that they may be implementing could be completely different for another person or another child, and can be completely different for another caretaker based on the circumstances. But the key, as we've talked about before, is consistency. And also, for me personally, like I put in here, basically showcasing discipline for a negative behavior, showcasing the discipline as compared to the physical punishment or the actual, basically, spanking the child, so to speak. That's the key difference, is showcasing the discipline as opposed to the physical punishment itself. So I know for me, like I kind of mentioned earlier in the broadcast, my dad's loud, booming voice would scare the absolute shit out of me. But it had an effect. I understood what was to be done. I understood that he was either upset with me or he needed to get my attention for something that I needed, a course correction in. And I responded to that. I understood why it was the way it was. He wasn't yelling at me. He was being loud. And that's that difference where you can showcase discipline for negative behavior as opposed to the actual physical punishment behind it. So that's really why this section resonated with me.
Yeah, it's interesting. They kind of give you, like, there's 6 principles, right? They lay them all out there, but don't organize them in any type of like staging sequence of importance or step by step. Do this first, do this second. Yeah. So it leaves a little bit on the table for me as far as like,
we're digging deeper, guys.
Yeah. What's the most important thing here? Like, is the most important thing to make sure that you lay out the consequence before you provide the consequence? Is, what's the structure to the whole scenario? Because if the structure is that the most important thing is to explain the consequence, then it's going to be almost impossible to have laid out a consequence for every scenario, right?
Oh, 100%.
Because who knows what this child's going to do? 1 second they're drinking Lysol, like you can't...
Sounds like my cat.
Honestly, that was me. Like, I did that. Like, it was ridiculous. My parents had to go get my stomach pumped, I think, as a kid. It was, I learned how to... My father took me to the swimming pool, taught me how to dive into a swimming pool. I went home to show my sister, dove off the top bunk straight on the floor, like, head first. Like, you don't know what a kid's going to do, right? Like, I apparently didn't understand, like, permanence, like object permanence at that age, but it was ridiculous. So like, how
Adam's
can you
together form a solid.
So what are you gonna do? You're gonna be like, child, I'm gonna teach you how to dive. You only dive into liquids, like, and if you don't dive into liquids, you might die. Like, you can't, like, how do you present that scenario?
Let me give you this list of acceptable liquids to dive into.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it can get completely absurd, and I feel like as a parent, like, there's just no way that you can do that. Like with my animal, there's just some things that she's going to do that I can't control.
We've had multiple conversations about
this.
Yeah,
and like, I'm sorry for her actions, but like, I can't be there 24/7 on her, disciplining her in the moment when she makes a mistake all the time. And to hold any parent to that standard is completely ridiculous, I think.
Totally.
So I think, like, understanding the 6 principles is good. I think that everybody should understand the 6 principles, but giving some leeway to parents to to say, okay, maybe this principle, maybe these 3 principles you kind of nailed in disciplining this way.
Yeah.
Maybe you gave clear communication and you told them what the outcome or what the consequence was going to be, and you maintained, some type of a correct feedback mechanism to not scare the child, right? But who knows? Maybe you messed up on when you were trying to do that. Maybe you messed up on the explanation of it all.
Right.
And your child thought that the consequence was one thing, and you were trying to tell them the consequence was another, but their brain is not as well developed, and they don't understand it quite as well as you do. So they thought that the outcome would be different, and so then they're going to once again take the punishment to the crime differently than you had anticipated. And so I think amongst adults, the awareness to give leeway to those things and to support one another, like here's a good example. Okay, so a parent yells at a kid at the park, right? Child does something stupid, whatever. Parent yells at the kid. Another parent nearby sees this, right? Other parent nearby sees the kid do the thing, sees the parent yell. They have options here, right? Their options are they could have approached the child, right? Probably not their place, but they could have. They could turn to their partner or whoever they're with, and they could, oh my gosh, did you see the way that parent treated that child? Oh, and just immediately started a rumor, right? They could have gone over to the parent and they could have asked them why, or said, hey, that I saw what your kid was doing, and talk to them about it. And because you don't know what really could have happened, like what prefaced the situation. So I think giving that parent a little bit of leeway they probably understand the situation a lot better because it's their kid. But a lot of times you'll see other parents scolding other parents for the way that they discipline their children. And unless it's like some erratic behavior where like dad just rips the belt off and smacks the child at a restaurant or something, like I think most of the time supporting one another is going to better not only the parent but going to better the child, because then the child is going to feel like their parent is doing the right thing, right? They have backup, they have support from other parents that they are a good parent. And so
exactly,
and that's one thing that in my childhood I saw a lot, where we'd go to a party, right? You'd go to a birthday party and all the kids are acting whatever, and some parents would turn on other parents, and you're like, whoa, like that's a bad parent. People start getting classified based on the way that they handle these 6 principles. And I feel like supporting one another is got to be the only way here.
Well, it goes right back to the quote that's in my discussion. Counselors can help parents and caregivers understand that this drive for independence, meaning the child fucking up, is to be seen as a wonderful event as opposed to the child misbehaving. So if parent A, meaning the parent in the park with their partner, watching the other parent or the other parent's child misbehave, having a dialogue is fine, but where can these parents actually make an impact, and not be a negative impact, but be a positive impact to where, hey, I know you're going through a hard time right now. This looks tough. Is there anything that I can do?
Yeah. That's easy. That's step 1. Exactly.
I mean, and it
step
seems
1.
so obvious, but how often does that happen?
Never.
Exactly.
And how bad does that parent feel when they scolded their child and they look over and they see these people talking about them?
Right.
Now they feel like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm a bad parent. Maybe I shouldn't bring my kid to the park anymore. And that because I'm afraid to go to the park because maybe they're going to be here and they're going to look at me this way. Now my kid doesn't get to go to the park.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
So
it's a spiral effect.
Exactly. It really is. and it just comes back to the whole ethos of therapy.
Nice word.
Right? And thank you. The whole ethos of therapy, right, is to support one another and to be able to talk about the hard things and come to positive outcomes that are going to benefit our society, and not just, see everything inwardly that I'm the bad person, I did the wrong thing, or everything outwardly, they're the wrong person, they did the bad thing, but have this connection, understanding, and compassion for one another to allow each other to make mistakes and
have the
grow
flexibility
and grow from it, right?
Exactly, 100%. 100%. I think this is one of our. This is good. This is a really good discussion as far as our bouncing back and forth between the parents. No, it's good though because we have good prime examples. A kid in the park makes total sense.
Yeah.
We've seen children misbehave all the time, and you see it when you take yourself out of it. You periscope the whole situation, right?
Yeah.
You sit back, you're an observer. You see the parents over there. You see the other parent with the child misbehaving over there, and you sit back and you look, and you see the parents. They have a choice. The parents who have a child who is not misbehaving versus the ones who is. You look at the parents over there, and it's like, were they just talking underneath their breath? Are they making fun of this parent?
Mm-hmm.
What are they? They're being inactive in the development of the other child.
And so, of the other parent.
Exactly, and of the other parent. So how can you be active without being overbearing, I think is the thing. Like, it's one thing to come off as, hey, I'm here to help you. It's another thing to tell somebody how to do something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
yeah, and that's that on the other side of the coin is, I think probably even worse than being inactive would be to be the person telling other people what to do.
100%.
When you don't know the whole scope of the situation, you're just saying, I know better from my 2 seconds of this interaction. I know better than you.
Totally.
That's unfair. That's totally unfair.
All right, guys, moving on to the next section here, we're going to talk about autonomy versus shame and doubt. Healthy toddler development.
Dun, dun, dun.
Fanfare. So we're going to talk about Erickson's stages of psychosocial development again and how they play a huge role in child development. According to Wong...
Hold on one... Oh, sorry. I got to cut you off. Fire X Goddess. Hello, Fire. Says, hello, may I make a song suggestion? It's about mental health, and I would love to see your reaction and hear what you think. Let me try to get their attention. Thanks, Y. Yeah, Y's got our attention.
Thanks, Y.
Firex Goddess, please send us the song, and we will listen to it, not right this second, but we'll listen to it, and our next, we podcast this same type of topic every single Friday evening. So come back next Friday, and we will for sure have our thought process on that. And we'll probably.
Is it some original music?
No,
Can we actually play it?
It's NF The Search. Really funny that you mentioned NF because I've been listening to a ton of NF because my roommate is really, really big on an NF kick right now.
Interesting.
Really deep, amazing music. NF is an incredible rapper. But I will definitely look into that. Will and I will look into that, and we'll have something for you next Friday. So thanks for the comment.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for being a part of this. We'll take a look.
Sorry, bud. Let's roll.
No, you're good. So basically, we're talking about autonomy versus shame and doubt and healthy toddler development. So, quote, children's social development begins with an affectionate and trusting relationship with other family members and adults outside the family. But by the age of 3, children begin to develop relationships with other children. Caretakers can begin to encourage the idea of play, or more importantly, imminent play. Intimate play, excuse me.
Gotcha.
So before the age of 3, children are engaged in what's known as parallel play, which is basically in the presence of as opposed to interacting with other children. So that's the difference there. So parallel play is in the presence of doing their own thing with their own blocks or their own set of toys while being in the vicinity versus actual imitating play. Imitating play was the word that I was looking for, where the child actually imitates either the caretaker or the parents or the other child to try to pick up on that skill. And one of the things that they talk about in this thing where the play you basically imitate the caregiver and they follow the actions of their daily routines and occurrences. And this mimicking of positive behavior can lead to consistent and reinforced interactions regarding overall development, which I find is pretty cool. So basically, like, you have a child who is very absorbent, who can understand and process things based on feel and touch and taste and sense, and then they watch their caretaker, like, do dishes, right? They're like doing dishes, like, I could do dishes.
I could do dishes now.
Yeah, like, I don't know, we just lost our camera. Dang it. That's okay.
Oh,
Okay.
here, I'll go fix it.
Yeah, we'll go fix it real
I
quick.
got it.
We'll do a little
You
quick
can keep talking.
Well, I want to be able to have we're going to be able to
I'm here. We're good.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting, especially when it comes to autonomy, because that's what we were kind of talking about before off camera, where it's like, when does the individual become automatic? Meaning they've seen behaviors before, they understand patterns and trends, they're cognitively sent and like ready to understand what right and wrong is, and when does it become automatic for them, which I think is really interesting. So yeah, I think we pick up on behaviors all the time. I mimic Brian mimics me, we mimic each other. It's the way that's what we do in life, is we basically mimic the different actions, the tendencies. We find what works best for us. We may change our course even much later on in life to be like, well, I had this habitually for a really long time, but clearly this is not working for either my physical or emotional health. I'm going to change course. I'm going to do something different and mimic someone or something else to benefit me and my well-being.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do.
Oh, totally.
Especially when those roads have been laid, right?
Roads have been laid.
Yeah, once they've been laid, you're deep in it. It's hard to make a lifestyle change, make behavior change.
Exactly. At
that point. But it's and they've done a lot of studies on this type of stuff. You know, people, you'll do better in an interview. You'll do better on a date when you mirror people.
You'll do better.
When you mirror people, right?
Yep.
If you're in an uncomfortable situation, you might find yourself somebody's gonna walk up and they're gonna stand like this. You're like, oh, this guy's a little uncomfortable. It's gonna be really hard for you to be open like this. You might find yourself crossing your arms and doing the same thing because they're giving you that distance. They're saying, I don't want to be that close. I'm right here right now. We're at a distance.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
And that's one reason why I think handshakes are good.
Yep.
Hugging is like one of the best things that you can do because you immediately break that. You go in, you give somebody a hug when you meet them, when they show up, and that all that ice is broken. You've already broken that contact point. You guys can relax at that point, and it kind of breaks that like I'm gonna mirror you whole scenario.
Right. And it's very similar to patterns and trends as well too. I don't know if you guys have heard of the experiment where there are a group of people at a crosswalk, and there are two control variables. The first control variable is a guy in shorts, a tank top, and flip-flops who jaywalks.
Jaywalker.
The crowd of people don't necessarily follow him or her.
Really?
Somebody in a suit that's not wearing flip-flops, not shorts, not a tank top, in a full suit, does the same thing, jaywalks.
This guy's jaywalking too?
You find, because of the way that this person is dressed and the authority, the aura of authority that they have around them, you'll find people follow that person just because they think that you need to mimic this behavior.
Really?
Strange, right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
It makes total sense.
Makes total sense.
Makes total sense.
It's one thing that I'm really learning with my fitness business here is that showing people what you're doing is just so much more beneficial than telling people what you're doing. Because if they can follow your actions, and it's probably because it's so easy for us since we've grown up mimicking and being a sponge and learning through that way.
Yeah.
Right? It's just so much easier for us to learn to see something than to read something or hear something.
Tell me about
it.
Yeah,
right.
Reading all these articles online, you're like,
exactly.
Like you start to get overload where you're like, I feel like I've read this in 17 different ways in this 100 pages. I'm just like, I think they're driving the point home here. I think I'm supposed to pick up on this, but yeah, it's that oversaturation of either information or tendencies to mimic behavior, which I think is really interesting. So
those are kind of our ways that we learn, is what you're saying.
Totally.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I mean, I feel like it all kind of ties together in that, like, if you're really good as a child, even before you even like probably cognizantly know that you're doing more parallel play for a longer period of time,
right?
You're going to potentially develop a certain character type that your parents then are going to either reinforce in you or try to drive out of you.
Right.
And that is going to lead to, right, those four, what were those called again? What were the original four called? Were they personality types?
Oh, my goodness. Put me on the spot.
Put him on the spot.
Put me on the spot.
Dog, go.
Run, dog, run.
Run, dog, go. It's back now. Patterns.
They were different attachments of patterns and development of attachment patterns.
Attachment patterns.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
types
Yeah.
of attachment. Securely attached, anxious, resistant, avoidant, attached, and disorganized, disoriented.
So it's all a sequence,
Yeah.
right? It's all a sequence.
Exactly.
I wonder, what do you think I am? Do you think I was more of a parallel player or more of a what imitator?
That's a really good question.
Thank you. I came up with a good question, everybody.
I think you were more of... I think you were more of a mimicker as opposed to a parallel player. Like you could be independent and parallel and do your thing, and like you could be in your own world, but at the same time you were very cognizant of the world around you, and you saw through your basically like, you know, your peripheral vision, so to speak, that you would pick up on what other people were doing, and then you would follow that to try to see how good you were on a scale compared to that person. And it's not a bad thing.
That's interesting.
But you were able to like assess where it's like, okay, my strength is here. Okay, not so good with that. That's fine. I'll move on to the next thing. Okay, I'm gonna move here. Okay, I'm not. Okay, oh, I'm really good at this. Oh man. Okay, like I'm much better than this person. I can see I can just trounce this person in this. But what I mean is that you were cognizant of having both. But I think if I had to lean one way, I think you were definitely more of a mimicker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Huh.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that insight into
yeah.
me.
Well,
it's cool to get an outside perspective on yourself. You know.
You had a worldly like sense or like around you all the time, but you were also laser focused on specific things, which I thought was really cool. Actually, I wish I could definitely take some of that out of you for me personally. I'll take some out of you.
Take a little bit.
Take it out of you.
You can have as much as you want, Will.
This is going to be the
NC-17
version of this podcast. So,
Ooh.
All right. So basically, I'm just kidding. So basically, to end today's discussion here, I'm going to actually read out loud a response that I sent back to someone else's discussion post. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this person's name anonymous.
What were they originally talking about?
It's all the same stuff. It's the
stuff.
attachment and emotional development for infancy.
Cool.
So I go, hey, blankety blank blank blank.
Blank.
Great post. Both readings this week made me reflect on my upbringing quite a bit. Personally, having older parents as I did was a combination, a strange one, but also rewarding at the same time. I felt as if they brought all of their life experience into my development at a very early age. For example, my father and mother would much rather I watch a sex scene on TV than be exposed to violence in terms of entertainment. The natural act of lovemaking was not suppressed, but encouraged over violent action-packed scenes. My question is, where do you draw the line? In a child's development, are there justifiable circumstances for one over the other as long as it's explained and understood? I'd love to hear your thoughts. For me, it's social and emotional development. According to counseling individuals through the lifespan, quote, children develop a basic self-concept, which includes experiencing pride for displaying good behavior and embarrassment or distress at displaying bad behavior. Now, going back to the example that I shared before above, I felt a sense of pride knowing the difference between right and wrong, and also understanding entertainment is not real life. Being able to distinguish between the two was a huge developmental milestone for me personally. As long as there's an explanation and, more importantly, an understanding, do you think exposure to somewhat taboo subject matter can have a positive outcome? And I thank them again for their post. And I say, note for clarification, I was not watching mature content as a toddler. This happened much later in my childhood.
Not a toddler.
Yeah, not a toddler.
Not a toddler.
HBO Sex and the City as a toddler was probably not a good idea.
No.
But it raises a good point. Are you able to distinguish the right and wrong from it? Do you understand why my father and mother were in that sense of like, yes, I would much rather have you consume entertainment that has to do with the natural act of lovemaking and sex in general versus putting a gun to someone's forehead and pulling the trigger for entertainment value.
Yeah, Die Hard.
So exactly.
Dang.
Die Hard's a great movie though. I have nothing against Die Hard.
Nothing against Die Hard. Nothing against Die Hard. Yeah.
So yeah.
And everybody does it differently.
Exactly.
Right? You're gonna have the Dia boys who are gonna, keep no gel. No, you can't even have gel in your hair in middle school. And you're.
Do you think there's no way Peter wears hair gel right now? There's absolutely
no way. I doubt it. But I remember when he asked me for hair gel.
Dude,
we were in like 6th grade, and I'm like, dude, like you can't have hair gel. He's like, nah, gotta get it at school. So there. I mean, that's just one small example.
Exactly.
Like every parent is gonna set up these different guidelines and create these different boundaries and barriers and whatnot. And your parents were a little more free with the sex stuff. My parents were pretty tight about, I would say, about the sexual stuff. We didn't see a lot of that. But my sister watched scary movies when we were really young. I wasn't into that, and I was terrified of that kind of stuff. But they were okay with more violence and were more uptight about the sexual scene stuff.
Interesting differences.
And I think that my family kind of still is that way, honestly. If we're sitting there as a family and there's a sex scene in a movie, there's a little cringe to all of us. Like, oh my gosh. Like, or it was always the running joke that like if there was a sex scene in a movie, it was like, oh, Dad picked it out. Like, of course.
Oh, gotcha.
Of course, Dad, you picked this out again.
Shovel the blame on Dad.
Oh, Dad. Yeah, Dad always got the blame if there was ever a sex. Well, he picked this one movie one time where like the opening scene, I can't remember what the movie is called, but the opening scene is literally like they walk to this trailer park and they open like this trailer park door, and it's like a slow-mo shot from like the bottom up, and it just like stops like right on her like giant bush. And it's like that's the opening scene of the movie, is just this woman's just bush. And
Quentin Tarantino presents Bush.
Exactly. And so ever since then, yeah, that was the running joke. But yeah, very different.
But it's cool to talk about those differences though. Now that's exactly what we're talking about with the development, is that like how can different upbringings produce similar results, but at the same time still have your own identity, like we talked about in the last couple weeks.
Absolutely.
So cool.
It's good stuff.
Guys, thank you for being here as always. We're growing. Mental Health Awareness, episode 4. We'll see you back here probably next Friday as well, too.
Shout out to Fire Goddess. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much.
And we will be listening to NF's The Search throughout the week, and we'll give you a little rundown on what we think about it. Yeah, we'll certainly will, and we appreciate you tuning in. Like I said, we're always on twitch.tv/allofusstudios. We also have content come up every week on usually about Wednesday or Thursday. I'll drop it on our YouTube page, which will just be in All of Us Studios as well, too. You'll find it in the library. You'll find it archives under Mental Health Awareness. So, perfect. Guys, Brian, appreciate you being here. Thanks, buddy.
As always. Great. All right. Till next time. Take care.